بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given superiority to some people over others, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given superiority to some people over others, and He has given superiority to some places over others, He has also given superiority to some periods of time, some seasons, days and months over others. Can you sit up? This is the selection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gave the Prophets alayhi salatu wasalam superiority over all of mankind. He gave Mecca and Al-Masjid al-Haram superiority over all other parts of the earth. And as He has decreed, there are some times that are more valuable and precious than others, more virtuous. Like Laylatul Qadr, khayrun min alfi shahr. On one side you have 1,000 months, and on the other side you have this one night. This one night is heavier than 1,000 months. Why? Because the rewards that a person can gain in this one night are more than a person could gain through worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala non-stop for 1,000 months straight. That's over 80 years. Then that virtue was not restricted to one night of the whole year. Yes, Laylatul Qadr stands out from all other nights. Nothing can compare to it. But it wasn't that there are no other opportunities. The only opportunity to get immense rewards is Laylatul Qadr. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us many such seasons. And one of those seasons are the months of Al-Ashhur al-Hurum, the sacred months. There are 4 months that are sacred. إن عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا في كتاب الله يوم خلق السماوات والأرض منها 4 حرم ذلك الدين القيم فلا تظلموا فيهن أنفسكم. There are 12 months. There always have been 12 months since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth. And from those 12 months, 4 are sacred. Which ones are they? Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, and Muharram. And standing alone by itself is Rajab. So we have just started the month of Rajab. And the word Rajab itself means to honor and to respect. So Murajjab in the Arabic language is used for someone who is very, very well respected and distinguished in his community, in his society. That's why it's often added to Rajab. They say Rajab al-Murajjab, the revered month of Rajab. And in one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ referred to it as Rajabu Mudar, the Rajab of Mudar. Mudar was a very large clan of the Arabs. And there were these were two groups who were constantly competing with and at odds with each other. You had Mudar on one side and you had Rabi'a on the other side. So in these 4 months, even though the tribes used to be having battles and wars amongst themselves, there used to be a ceasefire because they knew since the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, these months are sacred months and there is no fighting allowed. There was no fighting allowed in these 4 months. So what the Arabs used to do is they would say, okay, well, we need to fight and this month is coming up. So what we'll do is we'll postpone this month and we'll bring another month forward. And so Rabi'a would do that. And because of that, the month of Rajab was always confused. Sometimes they would bring the month of Ramadan first and say, okay, we'll do Rajab later. But Mudar was very, very diligent about respecting and honoring the month of Rajab and never playing around with it. So it was referred to, it was known very commonly as Rajab Mudar. The Rajab that Mudar always upholds. Because if you were to just say, okay, Rajab, so for Rabi'a, Rajab would be coming 3 months later. So if you wanted to know when is the exact time of Rajab, you'd have to ask somebody from Mudar. So it was known as Rajab Mudar. الذي بين جمادى وشعبان. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us one very clear instruction in these same verses regarding the Ashhur al-Hurum, the 4 sacred months. And that is, فَلَا تَظْلِمُوا فِيهِنَّ أَنفُسَكُمْ. Don't wrong yourselves. Wrong yourselves meaning committing sins. Committing sins. Every time a person commits a sin, they have done dhulm on themselves. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about nations that perish, nations that were destroyed. وَمَا ظَلَمَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not do any wrong to them. They wronged themselves. They put themselves in that position where the punishment of Allah became certain. So the most important thing about these months is for all 4 of them, it is important that we stay away from sins. Even though we should abstain from sins in all parts of the year. However, in these months, the sinfulness of the sin increases. So it's even more sinful. So a minor sin might have much greater repercussions than it would in other parts of the year. And a major sin would be even more serious than it would be in normal times. And this is the same thing in sacred places. A sin committed in the precinct of the haram is much more severe than the same sin committed outside the haram. It's severe in both places, but it's more severe in a certain place. Same thing happens in the month of Ramadan. Person commits a sin out of Ramadan, it's a sin. They have to make tawbah and istighfar, but if they commit that sin in the month of Ramadan, it's much more severe. So whenever the virtue of something, of a season increases, so does the gravity of the sin in that same season. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us that stay away from sins in these months, be very, very careful. So that's one thing. The second thing is that as a part of our faith, because we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted these months greater importance and virtue over other months, so our duty and responsibility is to look at the month with respect from our hearts. Because it's from those things that Allah has made sacred, and He subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ حُرُمَاتِ اللَّهِ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ. Whoever has honor and reverence for the sacred things of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is much better for him in the sight of Allah. And the other verse, فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. It's a part of the piety that anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made sacred, we have a great deal of importance for it, a great deal of reverence for it in our hearts. The second thing is, in all of these months, in all of these sacred months, it is important that we increase our acts of worship. It is important that we increase our acts of worship. Now, there is no specific worship that has been designated for the month of Rajab, nor is there a specific day that has been designated that is more virtuous than other days, nor is there one night in this month that is more virtuous than other nights. There's nothing like that. But the fact is that because it is from the Ashhur al-Hurum, and the Prophet ﷺ used to increase his ibadat and encourage others to increase their worships in these months, that's why we should also do the same. Sa'id ibn Jubair, rahimahullah, great tabi'i, he asked his teacher Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, and it was the month of Rajab. He said, did the Prophet ﷺ used to fast in Rajab? What was his fasting like? So Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says that he used to fast so much that we would think that he is not going to spend any days without fasting. And then he would stop fasting, and then we would think he's not going to spend any days fasting. In other words, intermittently he would fast and then stop fasting and then fast and then stop fasting. So as much as we can, we should try to fast in this month. Also, because it's a season, it's a time of importance in the sight of Allah, the hope is that all our other worships will also be more rewarding. They will become more rewarding in these days. And our du'as also will be more accepted. And one of the things that ulama have mentioned is that Rajab is the opening for the season of worship. Rajab is the opening. In fact, they said that Rajab is like the season of planting the harvest, planting the seeds. And Sha'ban, which comes right after, is the season for watering those seeds. And then Ramadan is the time of harvest. That's where you reap. You reap, you reap. So anyone who wants to benefit from Ramadan in the true sense must start working towards it now. And one of the most important things, as an example, one of the most important things in the month of Ramadan is recitation of the Quran. So often what happens is people fall into this pattern where Ramadan is the only month that they are reading the Quran or reading it regularly. Now, for yourselves, you have classes and periods for your Quranic studies, so you're reading Quran, all of you, to some degree, to some extent. However, what we're talking about is voluntary reading, not where you have to, but where you're doing it only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to gain reward. And recitation of the Quran is one of the greatest forms of the remembrance of Allah. And it opens up one's heart and one's mind to the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is so much reward for every single letter that we recite. Every letter brings at least 10 hasanat. So if you recite a whole surah, you're earning thousands and thousands of rewards for every surah that you recite. So this is a month where we start assessing, where am I in relation to Quran? Have I been reading Quran throughout the year since last Ramadan? Or am I weak? If I am weak, then this is the time to pick up. For those who have memorized portions of the Quran, or who are already a hafiz of the Quran or hafiz of the Quran, this is the month where they need to really pick up things and do their muraja'ah. There are less than 60 days left in Ramadan. It's not a lot of time to revise the whole Quran and make it really, really strong. Whether someone is leading Taraweeh or not, Ramadan is still the month of the Quran. In fact, the Salaf Salihin would leave everything in the month of Ramadan and just read Quran all day, all night. But it takes time to build that connection. It doesn't just happen that month of Ramadan has started, so now all of a sudden we are prepared to read large amounts of Quran. It doesn't happen like that. In fact, what usually happens is the first 10 days are spent just adjusting to Ramadan. The fact that you're not eating, the fact that you're getting up at different times, the fact that, okay, you have to go for Taraweeh, you just spend that time adjusting, and then you have the middle 10 days where you've gotten used to it, and then the last 10 days, everyone is thinking about Eid, what to do for Eid. So you don't really reap the benefits, like the Salaf Salihin told us, that Ramadan is actually the month of the harvest. This is where you're taking and taking and taking and taking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, the time to start preparing is now. Look, A mistake, a sin, like I said, is a sin. But if we look at some of the mistakes that we make, for example, using bad language, using foul language is sinful. Using foul language is sinful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited us even from calling each other by names. وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden us from laughing at each other and mocking each other. لَا يَسْخَرْ قَوْمٌ مِّن قَوْمٍ عَسَىٰ أَن يَكُونُوا خَيْرًا مِّنْهُمْ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a separate warning for women. وَلَا نِسَاءٌ مِّن نِسَاءٍ عَسَىٰ أَن يَكُنَّ خَيْرًا مِّنْهُنَّ. So sitting down and making fun of someone is bad. Calling someone by names is bad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has announced destruction for who? For the one who is always criticizing people, making fun of them to their face and behind their back. وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ. Humazah is the one who backbites people, and Lumazah is the one who's always criticizing people to their face. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this person is doomed. Alright, so it's bad enough as it is. Doing it in these months is even worse. And in fact, ulama have written that there are sins, like is mentioned in one hadith, that on the Day of Judgment there are people who will come with mountains of good deeds. But the sins they committed when they were alone, when they were in seclusion, were such that they erased the rewards of all their good deeds. This is one hadith. That the sins, whenever they had a chance to be alone and guard the commandments of Allah, they didn't guard them. In seclusion, the sins of seclusion wiped away all their good deeds. And the other hadith, very famous, where the Prophet ﷺ asks, do you know أَتَدْرُونَ مَنِ الْمُفْلِسِ? Do you know who is bankrupt? So they said, الْمُفْلِسُ فِينَا مَنْ لَا دِرْهَمَ لَهُ وَلَا دِينَارٍ. Somebody who has no money. He's usually the bankrupt one, the poor one, impoverished one, destitute one. So the Prophet ﷺ said, no. The true bankrupt one is the one who will come on the Day of Judgment with heaps and heaps of good deeds. And just as he feels that he's about to get his reward for those deeds, people will start coming and claiming against him. What did he do? He swore at such and such person, or he hit such and such person, or he took the property of such and such person, and he did all of these things that were hurtful to others. So now, because there is no money to be exchanged on that day, it will be about deeds. So how will he compensate them? He will have to compensate them from his own account of good deeds. So they'll come and they'll take away his deeds, they'll take away his deeds, they'll take away, and it's like somebody who owes people money, he's got a bunch of money, people are coming and taking it away. Except here it's good deeds, and that's the only thing that matters on that day. So much so that all his good deeds will be finished, but there will be people, and remember, every person when they claim, you know how you might read in the newspapers that, so-and-so sued for so many $1 million. And you think, what? It was such a small thing, and how did he get such a big handout? It's going to be like that. And for every small mistake, every small pain that we put someone through, they'll come and they'll claim millions and millions of our deeds. And then, this person's good deeds will be finished. But he still has people that he has to compensate. He has to pay them for the harm that he did to them. So then, the only way out is that their sins will be dumped on him. So they'll be able to shed their sins because of the fact that this person hurt their feelings, insulted them, or physically hurt them, or took something from them. And then all of their sins will be dumped on him, so he'll come with mountains of good deeds and he'll walk away with mountains of other people's sins because of his own actions. These types of things become even more severe in these sacred months because the sin of the sin is amplified just like the reward of the good deed is amplified. And it really, if we look at it from this perspective, then it puts us in the mindset to be careful about what we're doing, to be diligent in what we say, what we speak. A Muslim doesn't speak carelessly. A person of Iman doesn't just let things roll off of their tongue in the heat of the moment, because they know that every single word that I'm saying is being written. Everything is being documented. And on the Day of Judgment, I have to give an account for this. I will be asked about every one of these things. In fact, one hadith mentions that one person says a word, and that word is so despicable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he falls so deep into Jahannam because of that one word, as is the distance between the sky and the earth. One word. And to that person, in fact, the hadith says that إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَا يَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ مِنْ سَخَطِ اللَّهِ لَا يُلْقِي لَهَا بَالًا. He didn't even think about it. It didn't even occur to him that I'm saying something serious. I was just saying, I just said it. No, it just came out of my mouth. It doesn't work like that. You are in control of your mouth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you control over your mouth. But on the other side, sometimes a person says something that is so pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah Azza wa Jal puts a stamp of His approval on that person. يَكْتُبُ اللَّهُ بِهَا رِضْوَانَهُ إِلَى يَوْمِ يَلْقَاهُ. Allah is so pleased with that thing that the person said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts a stamp, that I am pleased with you until the day you come and meet me on the Day of Judgment. So this is the season to be assessing ourselves and preparing ourselves and raising the standard. If you think about it, every one of these months is raising our standard for upholding good and doing more good, and also the standard for abstaining from wrong. So now that we understand it, it's our responsibility to work with this and to improve ourselves and to make an effort every single day, so that every single day is seeing good changes in us. And these months are the catalyst. Like I said, now is the time to plant the seeds, and soon will be Sha'ban to water the seeds, and then soon it will be the harvest of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to spend these months in a way that wins us His pleasure and gains nearness to Him. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a source of forgiveness for us and the whole ummah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه